Michael Baer is a fractional chief marketing officer with over 30 years of experience in omnichannel marketing that elevates brands and drives growth. Michael has worked across the board with Fortune 500s to startups, ultimately transforming their marketing strategies to drive growth. Michael is an industry thought leader, and he developed the term stratecution, a concept that aligns strategy, execution, people, operations, and technology around a holistic marketing approach to accelerate growth. Hi, Michael, and thank you so much for joining me today.
It's still great to see you and happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited for our conversation today. Before we start diving into health and wellness and marketing, can you tell us a little bit more about who you are, who Michael Baer is, before you became industry thought leader and chief marketing officer?
Sure, happy to. I'm a lifelong marketer, and I realized many years after I'd become a marketer that I think I was born into it because as a child, I used to sing jingles, I used to say taglines, I used to quote ad messages. So there must have been something in my brain particularly suited for it. I started my career in advertising. I spent over 20 years on the agency side as a account leader, strategic leader for big global accounts. In fact, I started in New York City. I worked at several big New York ad agencies on packaged goods accounts, on global businesses, and I pivoted then I moved my career to Chicago for 10 years to get some different life experience, but also I kind of approached my world in advertising as I wanted to make a horizontal swath across all of it so that I could extract the entire value of advertising, create my own lifelong MBA, and so that I could move beyond it and become a holistic client-side marketer, which is what I did. I realized early on in those days of advertising in New York that I loved advertising, but really what I did was I loved marketing and strategy, and I would really dig in and develop, brand strategies. I love the idea of executing those brand strategies, but it was funny. I didn't really love ads. So, I think I was destined to ultimately really oversee the totality of a brand's marketing versus just focusing on creating ads. Um, as I was saying, my career took me from large global packaged goods advertising to more digitally focused agencies, and then even a media agency, and that was my entree into my first CMO gig, being a CMO for B2B businesses for about a decade prior to my time as a consultant.
That's great. When I was, how old was I? I think I was 20 years old. I was in college, still trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life and where I wanted to go, what I wanted to major in. And I sat down with my mom and she was like, maybe you would like marketing. And I looked her in the eyes and I was like, no,
Right,
not for
right.
me. Because every time I thought about marketing, like as a child, I thought of marketing as like the advertisements I would see in like gas stations and stuff, right? For like sodas or candy and stuff like that. I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to just like make advertisements all day. That sounds so boring.
Yeah.
It sounds like almost that was kind of but you actually experienced the ad side of it.
I mean, I honestly, around the same time you did, not in chronology, but in my life chronology, not in the actual timeline of the world. Um, I had almost the exact same experience when I left college. I was trying to decide what to do, and something or other got me focused on advertising as this combination of kind of business and strategy and creativity and innovation and art. And those two things, it's like left brain, right brain, yin yang, was absolutely defined me, like from the early days. And there was something about that that drew me in. So I had almost the same thing. So when again, when I got into advertising, it was because of this duality, this left and right brain aspect, which to me is really what marketing is about. And that's and to something we've talked about before, stratecution, like strategy, it is as much about left brain as it is about right brain, because there needs to be some lateral leaps and lateral thinking that give it something that makes it memorable.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have developed the term stratecution after working with businesses in their marketing departments, in their ad departments for a while. What were you seeing that businesses were lacking that inspired you to create this concept of stratecution?
Well, I'll tell you what it was that got me initially to come up with this concept. But it's interesting. I think there are multiple different ways companies don't stratecute, if that's a word. I've referenced that I was working with global packaged goods brands, and one of them was Unilever. Universally known for highly strategic marketers, and they were, and they are. And I worked for a while with a variety of different segments in Unilever, and different people, but many of them, they all held kind of the same beliefs, which was this idea of interrogating the brand and finding the DNA of the brand, and I loved all that, and we would spend months and months and months in qualitative research, quantitative research, creating, strategic concepts and testing those and such, and finally getting to some, brilliant strategy, brilliant strategic idea, to the point of, we'd have, you know, it'd be written up on papers, and people would hang them on their bulletin boards and such. I mean, and then the execution would just fizzle. Either they'd make an ad, there'd be nothing else. We'd try to convince them that this big idea that this strategy was built around should have an interesting tax sticker, or you should print things on the boxes that are shipped to the supermarkets, or we should do something else different in the way we go to market that would disrupt and demonstrate this fantastic strategic idea. And we wouldn't do it. They couldn't change the X, Y, or Z, or we couldn't manage to do these things. And I felt like at the end of the day, there was this belief that strategy was this, kind of the Lord's work, this incredible, powerful, brilliant people were working together, and this was really the engine of it. And then execution was just meh, it would just run itself, as if once you had a strategy, you didn't need to focus as much on the actual execution of your marketing plan. Uh, and I realized that strategy and execution, of course, go together, but that strategic execution, that actually brilliant and brilliantly done execution, will likely lead to success, even more so than brilliant strategy, amazingly enough. And it hurt me even to come to this realization that a brilliant strategy with weak execution will fail, but mediocre strategic idea or big ideas with excellent, flawless execution will succeed at some level. So, it elevated the idea of execution in my mind, that you could execute strategically. And that's how I came up with it initially, that execution, especially as the world became more and more digital, that execution needed to be viewed strategically. In other words, there were so many decisions you make along implementing a digital effort, and more and more and more every day. But where, to whom, How do we redirect? What should we follow up with? What's the, all these decisions that are strategic at the end of the day. It's not just press play and your strategy comes out. So that was how I came up with this concept. But it's funny because as I have now not pivoted, but my career has led me more towards smaller companies, growth companies, startups, companies that maybe have, obviously have less resource and less people and less time and less, budget to do things. So many of them just want to get started with tactics. And especially with this, and this is a whole other podcast we can do another time about, I think there's this myth of performance marketing that it's just a press play and it works and you grow. Like it's this thing that it's just a thing. You don't need to do upfront work. You just get somebody, you make some ads, you do Google ads, and it's just going to grow. So I believe there's a bit of a myth there, but I think there's this mindset in many startups that you just got to start. Hey, let's do some social media. Let's do a Dripify campaign. Let's put some ads on Google. And I said, what's your strategy? Oh, we'll just iterate and the algorithm will help us and it'll just keep getting better. It's cool. What's your brand strategy? What's your message? What's your, who's your customer? What do we know? Like all the things up front, the strategy. So, I think stratecution, as I was saying, is this idea that strategy and execution are two sides of the same thing, that they need to be thought of in tandem, and that on the one hand, strategy isn't an end in and of itself, that strategy needs to be seen through this lens of doing. What will I do to achieve this strategic destination I want for my business? And execution similarly needs to be seen through the filter of strategy. What's the strategy? Who, what, and where am I going? So that the execution leads you there. I've seen so many times that people get so focused on tactics and execution that as your head's down doing the execution, when you look up, you're not anywhere near the destination you had intended to get to. So that's the two different ways that stratecution can be undone is strategy as an end in and of itself, and not executing formally or holistically, and vice versa, just going straight to execution and not having decided and defined where those execution and that activation will lead you to, or is designed to lead you to.
Yeah. The way that I kind of think about the importance of strategy, and you can let me know if this resonates with your idea of stratecution and strategy, is that like a good reason why you should have strategy, at least a small bit of it to start off with, is because then you have something to compare it to in the future, right? So if you're doing something, you have a strategy and you execute, and it's still not working, right? Something's missing. People aren't coming to you. People aren't buying. It could be a few things, but at least you could look back at your strategy and say, okay, well, maybe there's something here that needs to be changed, or maybe let's adjust this instead of maybe we're targeting the wrong customer here or something like that. Does that resonate with your understanding of stratecution?
I mean, I think strategy, I agree with you. Strategy gives you a filter to review things on and with. So it creates a consistency, which is super important. I don't think it's given enough credit or emphasis. Even consistent things that we didn't like at first. If you think of a lot of ad campaigns, the first 10 you saw didn't resonate with you, but somehow consistency makes it kind of hang together. So I think strategic consistency is important. So you can, like you say, look back and things can connect, but it also provides this filter I was talking about. So often if you're working either with vendors or partners or even just people in house, and you're about to do something and the person shares it with you, or you look at it, how will you react to it to decide whether or not it's good or bad. It's not just some subjective thing. Is it on strategy? Does it tell the story we have built for ourselves? Does it lead
Mhm.
to where we want it to lead to? So it provides a filter of, guardrails to keep you from straying too far. So I think that's a key part of strategy. Um, it takes a lot of guesswork out too.
Yeah, definitely. And you said you've been working with a lot of smaller companies recently. And with these companies, do you normally notice that they have, I think you said that they normally have more execution, right? Instead of strategy. They kind of
Mhm.
jump over
Mhm.
the strategy part. When would a founder know it's time to focus more on their strategy instead of just trying to execute?
Well, I think strategy starts right at the beginning of your company.
Mm.
Not that it needs to be a tremendous amount of your time because you're still building things, building product and building capability and creating partnerships and driving investment if necessary. But at the, you still have to think about who am I for? Why am I a good choice for them? How will I get to them? There are a lot. I mean, especially there are a lot of great ideas that aren't success. I shouldn't say great ideas. There are amazing products and solutions that probably have come up. I mean, we know 90% of new products don't, fail. They don't succeed. It's not because necessarily they were bad products, but they probably didn't deliver or address a customer need. Just because there isn't one yet. I mean, it's funny. I've many times come to this point where it's like, hey, here's this product or idea where there's no competition. It's this niche. And I always say, is it a niche because no one's thought of it before or because no one needs it? No
Yeah.
one wants it. No one needs it. Um, so I think strategy really is just, again, beginning to think through who is my customer? What do they need? How does this solve their needs? Who will pay for it? And you mentioned healthcare marketing. A lot of times there's great ideas that don't fit the current healthcare ecosystem because there isn't really a buyer for it. We know that healthcare is a strange beast with end users, meaning patients, with providers, with payers, and and government payers. And it's a very complex world. And sometimes you come up with this thing that can identify something better than anything else. Maybe it's some diagnostic AI tool. But if you can't find who the customer is who will pay for it, who's incentivized to provide money for that, there's value enough for them that either that, how to enter that, then it's not going to succeed. And so part of your strategy, even in early days, is again, who is my customer? How are they going to find value in this? And will they or how will I monetize that value?
Mhm. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that you should just always start with strategy. You should sit down and you should come up with this, like at least a small strategy.
Yeah, I think so. I do believe that. I mean, because even in the product development stage, you have to identify whether there is a market for it, and that's strategy.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Because I think, as you mentioned, is this product niche because nobody needs it? Or is it niche because nobody's thought of it yet? And most companies, very unfortunately, fail. And I would think it's because a lot of them don't do that research at first. They don't sit down and they don't ask themselves, or maybe they're just so excited, about their product, these founders, and they think, "Oh, I'm going to do it." And then they lack that piece of, "Okay, I need to go ask somebody if they actually actually want to use this," right? Um and we touch base a little bit on this in my in the exclusive episode of Sweat Strategy and Success, but I want to go into it here too because I feel like it's important. When you're thinking about your customer and your consumer, what questions should you be asking yourself when you're creating a product and doing this research to create your strategy in order to determine whether it is a product that people will actually use versus a product that you're just excited about and ready to get going without doing that customer research?
We've, I think, talked about it, not necessarily specific questions, but what are their challenges and needs? How are they currently solving those, or are they solving those? What are their expectations for a solution in this area? And then does my solution solve those? And then, what I was saying before, will they pay for it, or is there a participant in this ecosystem who will pay for that?
With my own personal work with starting podcasts and being a little bit entrepreneurial here and there, it's always like, okay, let's start off with a minimal viable product, right? And then using that as an entry point into asking people. So for example, I started getting really into surf photography when I lived in San Diego, and I really thought that there was a great idea there for me to like start a online business where you could take pictures of people surfing and then you could go onto this website, find your picture, and you could buy it through the website, right? I was like, oh my gosh, this is a wonderful idea. I'm so excited. This is amazing. And so I started and I took some pictures of people and I started handing out some cards asking like, oh, like I took some pictures of you. Do you want to purchase it? I think I had like I probably handed pictures out or handed cards out to maybe like 300 people and got like 3 purchases in total. Very, very low conversion rate. And so that little experiment, I was like, okay, maybe I should adjust my thoughts a little bit. So I think when it comes to marketing and specifically in coming up with a strategy, it's also kind of about, where you're starting off with your minimal viable product and if that's a good place to continue to market it, right? So
Yeah. No, I think that's a good analogy in that you probably didn't talk to the surfers themselves and say, would you be interested in this? Maybe those are people who, I don't know, they're on their own kind of people. They like to do their thing and they don't want to picture themselves, or, maybe, or so it could be that you didn't quite understand the actual audience. But there are all other things too. In fact, one of the part we didn't talk about yet, but it could be that it's just too damn hard. That's an idea that's good, but it's going to take a lot of money, meaning to get to the right people, to create this product. There's just maybe just too big, I think a lot of direct to consumer businesses that are probably low margin. And they think we'll just get out there and do DTC advertising and we'll grow this business. And we saw a lot of it during during the, you know, uh, um, post, during COVID, uh, and money was thrown at them. But I think most of them ultimately didn't really make money because it's costly. It's very costly to go direct to consumer, especially if you've got a big wide target and you need to sell a bunch to, cover costs and margins. So that's part of it too, is I guess it's part of strategy is understanding how do you scale, what the business model is, that kind of thing. Because just having somebody be interested is a big first step, but it's not the only step.
yeah, yeah, that's great. And what kind of businesses have you been working with in terms of industry recently?
Um, I have focused largely on healthcare businesses. Healthcare is a broad topic, so I've worked in a number of different areas in healthcare. I've worked with the provider side and on the hospital side, a little bit in strategic transformation work, and I've worked in medical device, both small companies, startup companies, but also I've been working with a very large global company doing strategy consulting with them, and I've worked with companies that provide technology and solutions for pharma, companies that uh, engage with HCPs in order to communicate both CME and says to them that companies, obviously pharma companies want to be able to get their ads and things like that in front of. So solution providers, marketing services providers, and health tech, digital health companies.
Hmm. And are you seeing any kind of trends happening in the health and wellness industry right now in terms of marketing?
I think one of the trends that people aren't talking enough about, it transcends healthcare, um, but it's particularly evident in healthcare, particularly post-COVID, which is just the glut of communication, the intense amount of clutter that has intensified, particularly for HCPs. So, we all know the story. COVID came, all the feet in the street, the salespeople from healthcare couldn't go out and see their customers and get new drug, get the pharma story out. And so all these companies pivoted to it's called non-personal promotion and digital promotions, and email marketing grew, and all these tactics that are digital began to work very, very well. And so digital spending on healthcare grew tremendously, dramatically over the last 3, 4, 5 years. But what has since happened is, because of that, all of a sudden this giant amount of clutter is now fighting the fighting the performance. It's challenging the performance that we've seen, um, in early days. And doctors or HCPs or any customer that we're doing outreach to has created a very thin filter of what they'll allow in. So it's becoming harder and harder. And you see this again across categories, email open rates, click rates, all these things, and click rates are declining day in and day out. And so that's a challenge. And what I fear is, with AI, or with generative AI, um, it's lowered the bar to creating middling level quality content. So it's even accentuating this seismic clutter, this seismic glut of content. So I just fear it's just becoming harder and harder to get anyone's attention, let alone one of 3,000 doctors who work in a particular specialty.
Mm.
So I think that's the challenge for all healthcare marketers, is how do I break through this vast cluttered landscape and growing. I mean, let's be honest, it's not going back. In fact, as I was saying, it's, AI content it's making it easier to do things on autopilot, um, to the nth degree. So how do I break through? How do I demonstrate authenticity? How do I generate attention and interest for my message when I'm competing with so much noise out there?
Mm. And for you, do you think there's a solution for this challenge?
Um, I'm working on it.
Mm.
I don't think there's like one note solution. There's certainly not a silver bullet. So one of the things I say, you have to kind of try to do as much as you can, not any one thing. So yeah, email is email performance is declining from what I see. That doesn't mean don't do email. I think you need to do email, or you should be doing some email marketing. But you can't expect it to be the only solution. So um, also do, the other things you were thinking. So, LinkedIn and other social media marketing, do those things. But I think we're seeing those, also struggling. And certainly the Google ads and the programmatic ads are all suffering similar fates. So I think there's no one single solution. I think it's, you have to play the, play the, as many things you can do and you can afford to do, and or your resources can attend to, uh, to try to break through. The other thing I think is, you know lazy, um, half baked, or just product centric messaging is destined to fail. I think people's filters are, again, fine-tuned enough to filter out the things they know are either spammy or stelly or uninteresting. So you really have to fight the urge to just tell somebody your product name or your brand message, or you have to try to again, this is why understanding what the customer's thinking, needing, challenges are, pains are, and the kinds of topics and information they actually are searching for. And if you can build around those things authentically, as authentically as you can, I think you can get through. Um, and if you think about, one of the words I like to use is empathy. It sounds a little soft, but empathy just means I understand you, and thus I will act accordingly. I will feel for you in ways, so I won't. Yeah, so I'll just behave in that manner. I think if you understand your customer, then you have some empathy around it, then your behaviors will follow that. And so the instincts to just go out there and push a message, push a product, I get it. I mean, believe me, marketing is not, it's not an art form. It's a commercial endeavor to over some amount of time sell your product and drive revenue. There's no question about it. But you have to be a little patient because some things take a little bit of time, and you have to also, nobody buys, you can't sell anybody anything. They have to buy it because you've drawn them to it and they determine it's something they want to buy. So saying your product message more and more is not going to sell it more. It's going to actually repel it more. And so I think that's, you know, overarching got to be the approach you take.
Yeah. And I can hear it when you're talking about it, but I just want to clarify for the sake of this podcast, that this is a trend that will continue into the future, correct?
Oh, yeah. I mean, again, we see it every day. I mean, how many LinkedIn requests do you get from people who are selling you something? And they don't really think about you and what your needs are. They're just saying, we sell a solution and you might need it. Let's get together. I mean, imagine somebody coming up to you and saying, I would like you to get married or have a date, or I don't even know you yet. You don't know me. You haven't even asked me a question about me. It's a little bit like that. So I think and yes, we know also of all the AI tools that are making it easy to create a persona connected to a LinkedIn platform, and it'll push out automated AI posts for you at your chosen time. So it's all happening and growing, but most of it isn't better. It's just more and easier. And so I think, because, and this is also could be in another podcast that you and I have, I believe that America is the home of the shortcut. We don't want to do the work. We want to get it done fast. So, you know, we, we have AI. AI just makes it easy to do something. It doesn't make it better. And now because it's easier, it's there'll be a lot more of it. So yes, it's going to continue in the future, this trend.
Yeah. Yeah, and it almost seems like the solution really, and I think people are doing this with their marketing already, but maybe not to the true extent that it should be, is authenticity, right? That word is just thrown around all over the place, especially around social media. Oh, you have to be authentic, you have to be authentic. But yeah, how authentic can you be if you're just putting a prompt into ChatGPT and having it spit something out for you, right? Is that really authenticity? So it it's a balance, I think, as well. We're not gonna live in a future without AI, and so, in your opinion, how do you balance the 2? I mean, like, almost all businesses will be using AI. Is there a
Hmm.
different way that we should be using AI in our marketing in order to excel ourselves forward into this future without losing that authenticity?
Yes, I think first and foremost, AI should be used where it's really driving huge value, which is repetitive tasks, things that take a long time, that could be done easily by AI. Um, Summarizing interviews, finding things in huge documents. All that stuff is hugely helpful, and I've used it very, very successfully to help develop the basis and basics and foundations of strategies and execution. I think it can create. I think it can create topics and outlines and sketches and ideas of things quickly, really quickly, that then you can evaluate, and that's helpful too, and that gets you somewhere faster too. And I think you can use it for first draft, um, but my experience, there's a lot of it, is it does require a human touch. Um, Editing, prompting, reprompting, all those things. Um, I would be really hesitant to just create a model where AI was pushing things out automatedly without me reviewing them, thinking about them, editing them. At least at this point. I mean, we don't know where it's headed. There are proponents and detractors. I'm probably somewhere in the middle, but it's obviously going. There's plenty of innovation. There's a lot of money behind it, so it's not going away. But I think at this point, people should be using it a lot for those things that are really, it's absolutely proven to help speed up. But just be careful about how you use it when you're touching customers, because, like we said, there's a lot of clutter out there, and you don't want to create more of it. And what's happened? What's different than when I grew up in marketing? Um, Bad ads were easy to avoid, and so you just tune them out. Now you actually actively are repelled by brands that are too pushy, too demanding, too tone deaf.
Mhm.
You actually turn them off, and so I think brands do a lot of that. They'll say, let's just try this email where we're just gonna sell, and it's like, I think you might get one person to respond, but 99, out of 100 will actually block you or turn you off, and that's a danger.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Michael. I'm going to end this episode with one last question. If you could have one piece of advice for founders starting their businesses, creating a strategy, and creating execution, where would you tell them to start? What would your advice be?
I think it was in this little piece, not the earlier piece we talked, but I would reiterate it. It's do your best to understand your customer, uh, and understand their challenges and their needs and how you and your solution can possibly answer them and address them, and how you can communicate that to them. I think that's probably the foundation of all strategy, in my opinion.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Michael. I really appreciate your time with me today. And I know people are going to find this interesting. If you're interested in getting in touch with Michael, you can do so at his email, which is attached to this podcast today. Yeah, Michael, is there anything else you wanted to add on what you do and how you can help people?
No, I'd love to talk to any of you. Happy to set up time and chat about your customer, about your business, your needs, or just talk about marketing.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Michael. And maybe it sounds like there's a future podcast in our future as well. There's so many different little topics that got brought up. That makes me excited.
Oh, it's been fun. Thank you, Soleil.
Of course. Thank you.